Hey there everyone! Welcome back to our channel once again. Today, we'll be delving into the book of Psalms, exploring chapter 6, specifically from verses 1 to 10. Psalm 6 is a moving and powerful prayer penned by King David during an era of great distress and despair. In verse 1, David expresses his need for God's mercy and forgiveness. He acknowledges his own sins in verse 2 and humbly asks for God's grace. In verse 3, David pours out his heart and soul to God, expressing his deep anguish and longing for God's presence. He goes on to describe his suffering as a product of his own sin. In verse 4, David expresses his hope in God's goodness and mercy to heal him and restore his strength. In verse 10, he shares his trust in God's goodness and mercy. The Psalm 6:1-10 text expresses David's plea for healing and deliverance from illness and despair. He expresses anguish over his suffering and fears that God may be punishing him, yet he ultimately trusts that God will answer his prayer and bring comfort and reassurance. The psalm highlights David's deep reliance on God's mercy and his unshakable confidence in God's ultimate triumph over his enemies. Verse-by-verse breakdown. 1-3. David pleads with God to spare him, expressing his physical and emotional distress. He questions whether God will rebuke him for his sins or discipline him in his anger. 4-5. David highlights the importance of his life and the joy in praising God, even in the face of suffering and the dead. 6-7. David describes his fear and despair, feeling abandoned and consumed by his suffering. 8-10. David shifts from despair to trust in God's goodness. He claims that God has heard his prayer and will deliver him from his enemies. Key themes and meanings. Plea for healing. David's primary concern is his physical and emotional suffering, and he seeks God's intervention to alleviate his pain and distress. Faith in God's mercy. Despite his anguish and fear, David maintains his faith in God's compassion for him and his ability to deliver him. Trust in God's answer. David's confidence in God's response to his prayers and his ultimate triumph over his enemies are central to the psalm. Importance of praise. David emphasizes the significance of praise and worship to God, even in the face of adversity. Hope and assurance. Despite the initial despair, Psalm 6 concludes with hope and assurance that God will hear and answer David's prayer. This psalm provides a deep perspective on David's unwavering faith in God, even in the darkest times. Psalm 6 shows us it's okay to begin where we are and be honest with God about our languishing, our moaning, our weeping, our grief. He can handle your honest articulation of pain. Thank you for joining us today as we explored Psalm 6. We hope this has been a meaningful and insightful journey for you. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring content. Until next time, take care and God bless.